The sun sat heavy on the world that day, like a dying ember, trying not to go out, and the land didn't breathe anymore. It cracked. Wind curled low across the parched earth, tugging at dry grass like a mother searching for a child who'd wandered too far. The sky, though painted blue, felt like silence stretched too thin, way out past where the map curled at the edges. Where no church bells rang and no stagecoaches stopped, stood a man with weather in his bones and history in his eyes. They called him Elias Cross, not because he was kind, not because he was cruel, but because he didn't need nobody, and made sure they knew it. A single house, a single well, one mule named Dusty, a stretch of land he worked with, the kind of quiet that made folks wonder if he was praying or punishing himself. He wasn't born lonely. That kind of silence grows slow, like a thorn vine around the heart. Years ago, his brother died on this land, shot over a fence post by a neighbor who swore the creek belonged to him. The blood soaked in, but the grief stayed dry. Elias built fences, then tore them down, built trust once, never again. It was that kind of morning, August hot, with no promise of rain, when the first silhouette appeared on the ridge. Then 2 more. Then 5. Elias watched from his porch, thumb brushing his belt buckle like a man deciding if he'd draw iron. But something in the way those figures moved. It wasn't war. It was weariness. Old Chief Malaki led them, tall, lean, with white braids that spoke of time and battles both survived and surrendered. No rifles, no drums, just a slow walk under cruel heat toward a man's land and a well. Elias didn't speak, didn't ask who they were, didn't offer anything, just stepped off the porch, walked to the pump, and let it creak. Water hit the bucket like a hymn. Cool, clear, sacred. The chief didn't say thank you, only nodded. That kind of nod men give when they've seen death and lived past it. Elias handed him the bucket, watched the old man drink, then pass it to the others. 2 figures stepped forward after the women. One stood with arms crossed, shoulders squared like a soldier. Her hair was braided tight against the wind, and her eyes missed nothing. The other, she stood differently, still, like a tree rooted deep, but swaying soft in the breeze. Her gaze found Elias not in judgment, not in fear, in recognition. He didn't know why, but he couldn't look away. "Thank you," she said, her voice no louder than a summer breeze. The first words spoken, her sister, or so he assumed, said nothing, just watched, measured. The girl who spoke wore a faded dress that had seen miles, with moccasins stitched by care and time. Her hands were calloused. Her face was sun-kissed, but not hardened. Elias nodded. He hadn't spoken all day. Didn't figure now was the time to start. But something in her presence, something quiet and real, made him wish he had better words than the ones stuck in his throat. The bucket was passed back. Every drop gone. No one lingered. The chief turned. The men followed. So did the women. But as they left, the younger one glanced back. Just once, not a smile, not a question, just a look, like she saw something in him worth remembering. Elias stood there long after the dust settled. That night, he didn't light a lamp. He sat in the dark, on the porch, watching stars hang like promises not yet broken. Dusty snorted. In the barn, crickets sang low, and the land, though still dry, didn't feel quite as lonely. He thought about her eyes, not her face, not her voice, just her eyes. Eyes that didn't pity him, didn't judge him, just saw him. In town, they said Elias Cross was the kind of man who'd rather talk to wind than women, that he'd buried more memories than cattle. They didn't know he still heard his brother's laughter and the rustle of fence wire. Didn't know he kept a carving on his mantle, initials from a childhood whittled into the wood. Didn't know he hadn't looked a person in the eye in 5 winters. But that girl had. That woman, and something about her made the silence inside him shift, not crumble, just stir. The next morning, Elias checked the pump. It was half full. That was fine. He filled it again anyway, just in case. Not because he thought they'd come back. Not because he needed them to. But because somewhere between the dust and the well, he felt the faintest ache of hope. Mornings on Elias's Cross's land didn't come loud. They slid in like silk across wood grain, gentle and slow. The rooster had long since lost his voice. Dusty the mule brayed only when something truly stirred him. But this morning, it wasn't a sound that woke Elias. It was a feeling. He stepped outside, boots crunching soft on dry grass, the sun not yet risen enough to make shadows, just that pale blue hush before light gets loud, and there against the edge of dawn rode in the figures, the chief, his daughters, and a small bundle of gifts, wrapped in cloth and reverence. Chief Malaki didn't dismount. He didn't need to. His voice was sanded wood, smooth, slow, careful. Water given without price is the truest gift. He paused. Let silence speak for him. My daughters will stay a while. To help, as is right. Elias didn't answer at first. Just looked at the girls. The older one, stern and still, a hawk, perched and ready. The younger, quieter today. Not timid, just thoughtful. She looked tired, but not weak. He nodded. That was all. The chief nodded back. That was more than enough. They didn't come inside. Elias didn't offer. The porch became their meeting place, their shared table, their hearth. Nayeli. The soft-tide one began her work before asking permission. She gathered kindling, stacked it neat, plucked burrs from Dusty's mane. Her fingers hummed with memory, like they'd done this before, on some other land, in some other life. Sahani, the older sister, circled the house, checked the windows, watched Elias like a stranger in a story she didn't trust yet. She never smiled, but she nodded once, when Dusty nudged her, and she didn't flinch. That nod said more than words ever could. Elias tried to keep distance, not because he didn't care, but because he was starting to. He worked the fields, fixed the fence that leaned like an old man too tired to stand tall. But every time he looked up, she was there, Nali, not hovering, not following, just near, like wind you don't notice until it cools the sweat on your neck. One afternoon, she sat by the barn sharpening a blade, not for war, but for whittling. Elias found himself sitting too, for no reason at all. She didn't speak right away. Then, finally, gently, you built all this yourself. He nodded. After my brother passed, he said, voice rough, unused. Didn't want company. She didn't say sorry. Didn't offer comfort that felt like pity. Just ran her fingers along the fence post beside her. You built straight lines around your heart, she said softly, but even fences break when the wind wants in. Evenings came wrapped in orange and violet. Supper was simple, jerky, beans, bread. Elias always made enough for one. Now he found himself slicing apples, placing a second plate, then a third. They didn't sit at his table. They sat outside, under sky, legs folded like ceremony, and when they ate, they didn't talk about food. They talked about stars, trees, what it means when a fox crosses your path at dusk. Elias listened. For the first time in years, he didn't feel like the world was happening without him. Sahani still didn't speak much, but her eyes began to soften. One morning Elias rose to find his tools sharpened, his firewood stacked not just near the shed, but measured, arranged like offering. Sahani stood nearby, arms crossed. You waste too much motion, she said. This is faster. He blinked, then smiled, just a little. Thank you. She didn't smile back, but she grunted, which, from her, was practically a love song. The real shift came one night, under a smoky moon. The three of them sat near the fire, Elias, Nayeli, Sahani, the wind dancing slow through the grass. Nayeli looked at the flames and spoke like it wasn't meant to be remembered. Only felt my mother, she said. Used to say when the smoke rises straight, a soul is listening. The fire twisted upward, no bend, no falter. She'd tell stories, when it did that, Naili continued. Stories not meant for the living, just the ones watching. Elias stared at the smoke, heart still. What kind of stories? He asked. Naili looked at him. Her gaze held neither challenge nor charm, only depth, the kind that remind the soul what it's like to feel warm. That night, Elias didn't sleep in his bed. He sat outside, staring at the coals long after the sisters had gone quiet in the barn. And when the smoke rose again, straight as a spine, he whispered a name, Benjamin, his brother, just once. Then he closed his eyes and let the silence hold him. Over the next few days, things grew easier, not lighter, but clearer. Naili sang sometimes when she worked, not full songs, just pieces. Melodies that felt older than the land. Elias started talking again, not in paragraphs, but in presence. He taught her how to saddle Dusty. She showed him how to tie knots that wouldn't slip in rain. They laughed once when the goat got loose, and Elias ran half a mile, only to be outsmarted by a creature half his size. It wasn't loud laughter, but it felt like church. One evening, he found Naili sitting by the fence line watching clouds gather in the west. Storm's coming, he said, settling beside her. She nodded. Storms wash things clean. He looked at her. She wasn't looking at the sky anymore. She was looking at him, and so it was that a man who thought nothing beautiful could grow in him again found himself looking at a woman and wondering if maybe kindness had roots, if maybe stillness could bloom. The fence stretched across the land like a scar. Old wood, cracked and splintering, leaning against time more than any nail. Elias stood beside it, palm resting on a post worn smooth by years of wind. This here's where the land ends, he muttered. Beside him Naili traced the wire with her fingers, feeling the rust like memory. Maybe, she said gently, it's where it begins. That morning had bloomed slowly. The rains were threatening in the west but hadn't yet arrived, the kind of weather that hums against the skin, promising change. The sisters had been on the ranch nearly a week now, long enough for silence to turn into comfort, long enough for Elias to realize that the loneliness he'd worn for so long might not fit him anymore. He found Naili in the barn that evening, her hands folded around a wooden carving. She was shaping something not for trade, not for need, just shaping. He leaned against the doorframe and watched. You always make things? He asked softly. She didn't startle, didn't look up. Not always, only when I'm trying to understand something. He took a few steps forward, boots echoing on the wood. What is it you're trying to understand now? She paused, then looked up, eyes full of quiet honesty. You. Later that night, as stars leaned low, and the fire crackled like old paper. Elias sat between the two sisters, a coffee tin warm in his hands. Naili stared at the flames. Sahani sharpened her knife. I was married once, Elias said, voice barely above the whisper of wind. The fire popped, but neither woman moved. She left after the war. Said I'd brought the war home with me. Said I didn't know how to love. Anything I couldn't control. His gaze dropped. Shadows deepened beneath his eyes. She was right. No one rushed in with comfort. No one filled the silence. They just listened. Like they meant to carry it for him. Naili broke the stillness. We all leave something behind when the world breaks us, she said. My mother left her singing for a long time. Wouldn't let it rise. Said songs belonged to safer days. She looked up, but songs find their way back if you give them quiet. Elias stared at her. His breath caught, not in his chest, but in something deeper. That place inside a man where nothing grows unless tended gently. The next morning, the air was thick. The smell of rain rode in. Early. Sahani approached Elias by the fence line, arms crossed, face unreadable. She cares for you, she said, but if you hurt her, she won't bleed. She disappeared. just like our mother did after her heart broke. Elias looked at her, not angry, not defensive, just a man who understood the weight of warnings wrapped in love. I don't plan on hurting her, he said. Sahani narrowed her eyes. No one plans to. It's what they do when they're scared. That afternoon, Elias found Nayeli near the creek bed, fingers trailing over the stones. She didn't turn when he approached. He knelt beside her. There's things about me you ought to know, he said. I'm not soft, I'm not easy, and I ain't good with words. She reached for a smooth stone, pressed it into his palm. I don't need soft, she said. I need real. Their fingers touched. Just for a moment. But in that small space, years of sorrow softened, not erased, but no longer sharp. Back at the house, the wind picked up. Dust swirled in little dances across the yard. The storm was closer now. That night, Elias and Nayeli sat together under the awning, watching lightning pulse in the distance. He reached for her hand, slow, unsure. She didn't pull away. Her palm was cool, steady. He didn't speak. He just held it, not like a man claiming something, but like someone finally given permission to feel. Sometime near midnight, she whispered, "What do you see when you look at me?" Elias took a long breath. Someone who listens like the world still matters. She smiled, but it was a quiet smile, the kind that comes from being seen. "And what do you see," she asked, "when you look at yourself?" Elias paused, for the first time in years. He looked down at their hands. A man who ain't empty. 2 days later, Chief Malaki returned. He came not with ceremony, but with purpose. "I ride east at dawn," he told Elias. "Trade routes need walking, cornfields need tending." He looked over his shoulder, where Nayeli and Sahani packed their small things in cloth bundles. "I asked this," Malaki said, voice careful. "Let them stay, for a season." Elias didn't answer right away. He looked toward the barn, where Nayeli stood beneath the rafters, sunlight caught in her braid like strands of gold. He turned back to the old chief. "I'd be honored." That evening, Elias rebuilt a section of the old fence. He didn't ask for help, but Nayeli came anyway. They worked in silence, handing nails, steadying beams, planting posts deep into dry soil. When the last board was set, Elias turned to her. "You believe fences keep people out, or keep things in?" She looked at the horizon, then back at him. "Depends on who's holding the hammer." The sky that night was full of stars, but it wasn't the stars Elias watched. It was her, just her. And when the fires smoked up, curling straight toward heaven, he didn't look away. He whispered, something low, not a vow, not a prayer, just her name, Nayeli. And in the quiet afterward, he swore the smoke smiled. The sky cracked, not with thunder, not yet, but with the silence that comes before something breaks. You could smell it in the air, a kind of burn, like the land was bracing for pain. Elias stood in the barn doorway, hand on the frame, watching clouds swallow the sun. Nayeli stepped beside him, her braid already whipped loose by wind. She didn't ask what was wrong. She knew. Some things the earth tells you before men ever do. He'd seen the riders that morning, 5 of them, maybe 6, silhouettes up near the North Ridge, too far to hear, close enough to feel. They weren't tribe, they weren't travelers. They were wolves in dusted hats, men Elias knew from another life, men who'd lost land when Elias refused to sell, men who'd whispered revenge behind tobacco-stained teeth, and now, it looked like they'd remembered him. "Storm's not the only thing coming," Elias said quietly. Nayela's gaze didn't flinch. "Then we meet it." She wasn't afraid. That was the thing about her. Storms didn't frighten her, because she had weathered worse. They came near sundown, 6 horses, 6 men, all teeth and laughter and cheap whiskey swagger. The leader, a man named Riggs, dismounted slow, boots crunching the dirt like they owned it. You got too much land for just 3 of you, he called out, voice syrupy with menace. Thought we'd help lighten the load? Elias didn't move, didn't raise a rifle, didn't even raise his voice. This land's mine. Rigson chuckled. Don't matter whose name's on a paper. Out here, land belongs to the ones who take it. The others spread out, hands hovering near holsters. One lit a torch, a sick little smile curling under his mustache. We burn it. Then we see if he's still so proud. Before Elias could step forward, Sahani moved first. She came out from the barn like a shadow sharpened by steel. No fear, just purpose. She carried Elias's old rifle like she was born to hold it. You light that torch, she said, voice calm as ice across a pond, and you won't light another in this life. The man froze, because her eyes didn't lie. Then came Nayeli, not with a weapon, just her voice. She stepped forward, palms out, not surrendering, but anchoring. You come with fire, she said. But you forget this land remembers everything. The wind howled around her, skirts whipping. This land remembers the treaties you broke, the horses you stole, the women you chased off their own earth. She took another step forward. We're not leaving, and neither is he. Rigson spat. You? Think we care about tribe laws? Then, behind him, hoofbeats. From the ridge above, a dozen riders. Silent, steady, bows slung, spears drawn. The Apache returned, Chief Malaki, at the front. Face carved in stone. He didn't yell. He didn't need to. Just raised his arm, and every man behind him raised. His bow in kind, the storm behind them roared. Like it had been waiting for this exact moment. Rigson looked around. Outnumbered, outmatched. No law to hide behind, no fire to hide in. He hissed something low to his men. They turned and rode. The rain came fast after they vanished. It wasn't cruel, just cleansing. Washing away the dust, the anger, the ashes that could have been. Elias stood in the doorway, soaked, boots planted in mud. Nayel. I came to him, her braids soaked to her back, eyes glistening not with fear, but with relief. He reached out, touched her cheek with a hand that had built fences, dug graves, and never known softness until her. I thought I was done with family, he whispered. She looked up at him, face quiet as prayer. But I see now. I was just waiting for the kind that doesn't leave. She didn't speak, didn't need to. Her hands rose and settled on his chest, just above the ribs where his heart beat quiet and real. And in that storm, under that sky, surrounded by the ashes of old fear and the rain of new beginning, Elias kissed her, not like a man claiming, but like one being redeemed. Days passed, then weeks. Sahani built a new gate, stronger, wiser. Nayeli planted herbs near the porch, sang softly as she worked. Elias cut new fence lines, but this time they weren't to keep anything out. They were just to mark a home. The tribe came and went with the seasons. The porch always had room for another chair. The fire never burned just for one. And Dusty, that old mule, finally stopped, looking toward the horizon, because even he knew the loner was alone no more. One night, long after the stars had scattered across the velvet dark, Elias sat beside Nayeli on the porch. The smoke from their fire curled straight upward. She leaned against him, fingers threading through his. He looked up and whispered a name, Benjamin. Nayeli squeezed his hand. He's still here, she said. Elias nodded. Not crying, just full. Friend, if this story stirred something in your heart, leave a mark of your own. Tap that like. Share your thoughts in the comments. Tell us what this story meant to you, and where in this wide, dusty world you're watching from. Because sometimes, the right story finds you at the right time. And sometimes, water given freely blooms love that don't fade. Subscribe for more Wild West tales, 'cause we've got more fires to sit by, and more hearts to mend.